under international law and standards. Executions carried out following unfair trials violate the prohibition against arbitrary deprivation of life, as well as the absolute prohibition of torture and other cruel, inhuman or degrading punishment. Myanmar's last known execution was in the late 1980s. Since the military coup in February 2021, Amnesty International has recorded an alarming increase in the resort to the death penalty in Myanmar, where it has become a tool for the military in the ongoing persecution, intimidation and harassment of all who dare to challenge the authorities. The Myanmar National Democratic Alliance Army MNDAA is an armed resistance group in the Kokang region of Myanmar. The army has existed since 1989, having been the first one to sign a ceasefire agreement with the Burmese government. The ceasefire lasted for about 2 decades. MNDAA was formed on the 12th of March 1989, after the local head of the local Communist Party of Burma, Phyo, dissatisfied with the communist government, broke away and formed the MNDAA. The strength of the army is between 1,500 and 2,000 men. The rebels soon became the first group to agree to a ceasefire with the government troops. As the first group in the Shan State area to sign a ceasefire, the Burmese central government referred to the Kokang region controlled by the MNDAA. In August 2009, the Myanmar National Democratic Alliance Army became involved in a violent conflict with the Myanmar Armed Forces. This was the largest outbreak of fighting between ethnic armies and government troops since the signing of the ceasefire 20 years earlier. As a result of the conflict, the MNDAA lost control of Kokang, and as many as 30,000 refugees fled to Yunnan province in neighboring China. The Kokang area became the Kokang Self-Administered Zone on the 20th of August 2010, however. It was recognized as illegal by MNDAA. The group is one of 3 ethnic militias making up the Three Brotherhood Alliance along with the Thaw National Liberation Army and the Arakan Army that has dealt the junta's military forces a series of defeats since late last October. Their offensive has turned the tide in the civil war that broke out after the military overthrew a democratically elected government in a February 2021 coup d'état. Kokang was liberated from the Myanmar military regime early this year after the MNDAA retook its capital Lakai, a border town notorious for scam syndicates that were controlled by the junta-affiliated Kokang Border Guard Force. The MNDAA, the Thaw National Liberation Army, and the Arakan Army, known collectively as the Brotherhood Alliance, launched a coordinated offensive against the junta in northern Shan State. They captured major trade routes with China, strategic army bases, and liberated several towns. But the offensive, known as Operation 1027, came to a halt due to China's intervention at the regime's request. The MNDAA has kept full control of Kokang and established its own administration there. Execution marked the post-liberation debut of the death penalty. The MNDAA publicly executed 4 people on July 23, 2022, after convicting them. The accused were shackled and lined up for public display on a stage before the verdicts were announced via loudspeakers. Each of the men who heard he was about to be executed had a red X drawn on the sign that hanged from his neck before being transported by motorcade to the execution site. Myanmar's government announced it had carried out its first executions in decades, hanging a former National League for Democracy lawmaker, a democracy activist, and 2 men accused of violence after the country's takeover by the military. The executions were carried out despite worldwide pleas for clemency for the 4 political prisoners, including from United Nations experts and Cambodia, which holds the rotating chairmanship of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. The 4 were executed in accordance with legal procedures for directing and organizing violent and inhuman accomplice acts of terrorist killings. It did not say when the executions were carried out. The military government issued a brief statement confirming the report, while the prison where the men had been held and the prison department refused comment. Aung Myo-min, Human Rights Minister for the National Unity Government, a shadow civilian administration established outside Myanmar after the military seized power in February 2021, rejected the allegations the men were involved in violence. Punishing them with death is a way to rule the public through fear. Among those executed was Phyo Zeya, a former lawmaker from ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi's party, also known as Kyaw, who was convicted by a closed military court of offenses involving explosives, bombings and financing terrorism. Phyo Zeya had been a hip-hop musician before becoming a member of the Generation Wave political movement formed in 2007. He was jailed in 2008 under a previous military government after being accused of illegal association and possession of foreign currency. Also executed was Kyaw, a 53-year-old democracy activist better known as Ko Jimmy, for violating the counterterrorism law. Kyaw was one of the leaders of the 88 Generation Students Group, veterans of a failed 1988 popular uprising against military rule. He already had spent more than a dozen years behind bars for political activism before his arrest in Yangon last October. He had been put on a wanted list for social media postings that allegedly incited unrest, and state media said he was accused of terrorist acts including mine attacks and of heading a group called Moonlight Operation to carry out urban guerrilla attacks. Military spokesperson Major General Zeya said the decision to hang all 4 prisoners conformed with the rule of law and the purpose was to prevent similar incidents in the future. The other 2 men, Aung and Thura, were convicted of torturing and killing a woman in March 2021 whom they allegedly believed was a military informer. The military's seizure of power from Suu Kyi's elected government triggered peaceful protests that soon escalated to armed resistance and then to widespread fighting that some UN experts characterize as a civil war. Some resistance groups have engaged in assassinations, drive-by shootings and bombings in urban areas. Mainstream opposition organizations generally disavow such activities, while supporting armed resistance in rural areas that are more often subject to brutal military attacks. According to Myanmar law, executions must be approved by the head of the government. The last judicial execution to be carried out in Myanmar is generally believed to have been of another political offender, student leader Salatin Mongu, in 1976, under a previous military government led by dictator Nguyen. A non-governmental organization that tracks killing and arrests said that 2,114 civilians have been killed by security forces since the military takeover. It said 115 other people had been sentenced to death. An estimated 120,000 people are being held in Myanmar against their will. Chinese nationals have both been trafficked by these groups and fleeced by them. Human Rights Watch opposes capital punishment in all countries and under all circumstances because of its inherent cruelty and finality, and has long called on Myanmar to end all use of the death penalty. The junta's barbarity and callous disregard for human life aims to chill the anti-coup protest movement. European Union member states, the United States, and other governments should show the junta that there will be reckoning for its crimes. They should demand immediate measures, including the release of all political prisoners, and let the junta know the atrocities it commits have consequences. Thank you for watching Death Row.